My name is Diane Cowell. I'm 34 years old, and on a Sunday morning in April 2024, my mother stood up in front of 212 people at St. Casimir's Parish in Trenton, New Jersey, and told them I was the family's disappointment. She didn't use those exact words. She never does. What she said was, "We pray for Diane, who has chosen a path that has brought much sadness to our family." Then she sat down and folded her hands like she'd done something holy. I was sitting 6 rows back. I heard every word. I didn't cry. I've been a notary and estate planning attorney for 9 years. I know how to keep my face still when something costs me everything inside. 3 months and 11 days after that Sunday, my mother called me at 7:42 in the morning. Her voice was different. The performance was gone. She said, "Diane, we need you. The bank is calling in the loan. Your father's name is on the trust. We can't do anything without your signature." She meant the family property trust, the one my grandfather had set up in 1989, the one that, due to a clause no one had ever read carefully, required the signature of the named trust administrator to authorize any refinancing or sale. I was the named trust administrator. I had been since 2017 when my grandfather put my name there because, in his words, "You're the only one in this family who understands what a document actually means." My mother had forgotten that detail. She remembered it on a Wednesday in July when the bank gave them 48 hours. I want to take you back to the beginning because the church moment was not where this story started. It started much earlier, in a kitchen on Greenwood Avenue in Trenton, where my parents made very clear, very early, what they expected from a daughter and what happened when she didn't deliver it. My father, Edmund Cole, came from Krakow in 1981 with $40 and a brother who already had a job at a machine shop in Newark. He spent 30 years working that shop, then 3 more managing it, and he retired in 2014 with a back that ached in the cold and a pension that covered the basics. He was a quiet man, methodical, fair. His disappointments in me were always expressed through silence, which was somehow worse than words. My mother, Helena, was the one with words. She had grown up in a household where status was constructed sentence by sentence, and she had brought that skill to America with the same determination my father had brought his work ethic. Everything in our family was narrated for an audience, even when there was no audience present. Birthdays were performances, arguments were performances, grief was a performance, church was the main stage. I was the second of 3 children. My brother Marek was first, the son, which in our household carried its own gravitational weight. My sister Kasia was third, the youngest, the sweet one, the one who cried easily and was therefore considered sensitive rather than weak. I was in the middle, which meant I was the testing ground. Every decision I made was evaluated against a rubric I had never been given in writing. When I got into Rutgers for undergrad, my mother said, "Good, but your cousin Bogdan got into Penn State." When I was accepted to Seton Hall Law, she said, "A lawyer, okay, but family law? Why not something real?" I told her I wanted to specialize in estate planning and elder law. She told our neighbor, Mrs. Wisniewska, that I was going to be a divorce lawyer, which apparently sounded more impressive at church. I passed the bar in 2013. I took a job at a small firm in Princeton, Hartwell and Associates, where I spent 4 years doing exactly what I had trained for. Wills, trusts, probate, powers of attorney, the paperwork that holds a family together when everything else is falling apart. I was good at it. I was thorough and I was patient. And I understood that people came to me at the most vulnerable points in their lives and needed someone who would not rush them. In 2017, I opened my own practice. Coal Legal, a two-room office on Nassau Street with one assistant and a client list I had spent 4 years building by hand. That same year, my grandfather, Stanisław, my father's father, asked me to review the family property trust he had set up decades earlier. I spent 2 weekends going through it. What I found was a document that had not been updated since the 90s, with clauses that reflected a different tax environment, a different family structure, and one very specific provision that the named trust administrator had sole authority to authorize any change to the property held within the trust. My grandfather changed the administrator designation to my name. He told my father. He did not, apparently, tell my mother. The years between 2017 and 2024 were a slow accumulation of small cuts. I did not get married, which my mother interpreted as a personal failure she was required to share publicly. I did not attend every Sunday Mass, which she interpreted as spiritual negligence. I did not ask for her opinion on my office, my lease, my client decisions, or my personal life, which she interpreted as ingratitude. Every family gathering had a moment. A comment at Easter about my apartment being too small for a proper life. A comment at Christmas about my brother Mark's wife being a good example of a woman who prioritized family. A comment at my cousin Agatha's wedding reception about how it was a shame that some people chose careers over everything that actually mattered. I sat through all of it. I smiled at the right moments. I helped my father with his medications after his second back surgery. I updated my grandfather's trust documents when the tax law changed. I was present and professional and completely invisible in the way that middle children of immigrant families learn to be when survival requires it. Then came April 2024. The occasion was the parish's annual Family Blessing Sunday, a tradition at St. Casimir's where families are invited to share intentions and prayers aloud before the congregation. My mother had participated every year for as long as I could remember. That year, she stood up and delivered what she had clearly been building toward for some time. She spoke about the family's challenges. She mentioned my father's health. She mentioned Merrick's new business venture, which she described as promising. She mentioned Kazia's daughter, my niece Zosha, who had just started kindergarten. And then she said the prayer for Diane, the one about sadness, the one that made 212 people turn their heads, some toward me, some toward the stained glass, some toward their own hands. The priest said nothing. The moment moved on. I sat in that pew for another 40 minutes and then I drove home, and I did not call her. I want to be precise about what happened in July, because precision is what I do. On July 9th, 2024, my parents received a letter from Northeast Community Bank informing them that the line of credit secured against the family home was being called due to a missed payment schedule and a change in the loan terms triggered by my father's retirement income reclassification. The family home was held inside my grandfather's property trust. To refinance, sell, or negotiate any restructuring of that property, the trust administrator's authorization was required. My signature, specifically mine. My mother called at 7:42 on July 10th. She explained the situation in 3 sentences. Then, she asked when I could come by to sign. I told her I needed to review the current loan documents, the trust instruments, and the bank's correspondence before I could determine what, if anything, I was authorized to sign and under what conditions. She was quiet for 4 seconds. Then she said, "Diane, this is not the time for your lawyer voice." I told her it was exactly the time for my lawyer voice. I reviewed the documents over the next 2 days. The situation was serious, but not irreversible. The bank had sent a 48-hour notice, but that clock reset with any substantive legal communication from counsel. I sent a letter on Coal Legal letterhead on July 11th. identifying myself as trust administrator and legal counsel for the trust, and requesting a 14-day extension to review the loan restructuring terms. The bank granted it within 6 hours. Then I called my parents and told them they had 2 weeks and that I would be handling the negotiation. My father said, "Thank you." My mother said nothing for a long moment and then said, "We didn't know you could do that." I told her that was the point of having an estate planning attorney in the family. She did not respond to that. Over the next 12 days, I negotiated a loan modification with Northeast Community Bank that reduced my parents' monthly payment by $340, extended the term by 7 years, and removed a variable rate clause that had been quietly compounding against them for 4 years without their knowledge. I also updated the trust instrument to reflect current tax law, added a successor administrator clause so this situation could never arise again, and filed all the necessary paperwork with the county. I did not charge my parents for any of it. I billed 0 hours. When it was finished, I sent my mother a copy of the completed documents by certified mail with a cover letter that listed, in plain language, exactly what had been done and what it meant for their financial security. My father called when the letter arrived. He cried a little, which he almost never does. He said, "Diane, I didn't understand what you did all these years. I understand now." I told him I knew. My mother did not call for 11 days after the documents arrived. When she finally called, she did not mention the prayer at St. Casimir's. She did not use the word sorry. What she said was, "Your grandfather was right to trust you." I wrote that sentence down after I hung up because I knew I would need to remember it exactly. It was the closest thing to an acknowledgement I was going to receive, and I had spent 9 years learning to recognize the shape of an apology that would never arrive in its full form. I took what was there. I did not ask for the rest. I still go to St. Casimir's occasionally. Not every Sunday. I go when I want to. Which is a sentence I could not have said 5 years ago without feeling that I was doing something wrong. I sit where I want to. I leave when the service ends, and I do not wait to be seen or evaluated or prayed for by someone who mistakes performance for love. My practice is doing well. I have 4 attorneys now and a paralegal and a client list that keeps growing because people in this state have complicated family structures and complicated assets, and they need someone who will read every clause and update every document and make sure that when the moment of crisis arrives, the paperwork is correct. That's what I do. That is what I have always done. My mother asked me once, early in my career, why I wanted to spend my life dealing with death and inheritance and family conflict. I told her because someone has to be the person who actually reads the documents. She didn't understand what I meant then. She does now. If this story meant something to you, drop a comment. Tell me, has someone in your family ever needed you most right after they made you feel the least? I want to know. Subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.